Hi everybody, welcome to us, the Bookshop Band, on our virtual world tour, courtesy of the Wigtown Book Festival. Tonight we are coming to you live from Notably Books in British Columbia in Canada, but we're also streaming across a whole variety of bookshops all around the world.
We are. I think it's Notably Book Lovers Emporium.
Yes.
Say, unless you're just saying it's notably Book Lovers Emporium. So we can clarify that in a minute. We're also coming from Portkey Books, Tidal Wave Books in Albuquerque, Fuller, Hearthfire, Olcott's Attic, Michigan, Books on the Hill, Old Bank Bookshop here in Wigtown, Book Nook, Collected Works, Bath Old Books, Rossiter Books, Wigtown Book Festival. Oh, fancy that. The bookshop here in Wigtown, and Open Book here in Wigtown. Do you want to do the other side, Ben?
Clunes Booktown, I think that's in Australia. Henry Southern, Blue House Books, Caution Books, Bookworks in Albuquerque, Atkinson Price, Word in Brooklyn and New York, Main Street in Frostburg, Maryland, Bridge Books, Bookworks, I've already said that, in Albuquerque, Second Star to the Right in Denver, and also on Jackie Morris's page.
Woo!
Wonderful artist. But seeing as it's sort of a concert, we thought we would start off with a song. So this is a song inspired by Alexandra Fuller's autobiography called Don't Let's Go to the Dogs Tonight, about her experience of growing up in Central Africa in the 80s, and what in a chapter in it, she's about 8 years old, and her mother turns to her and says, it's time to go and find the cattle that have gone astray on the farm that we've been working on. Civil war has been raging all around, and they've just been gone for years, and so they get up on horseback and they ride out, and they can't find the cattle anywhere. Bobo's mum turns to her and says, you stay here, I'm going to carry on, because Bobo's getting tired, and she just rides off, leaving Bobo all alone in the middle of the bush. And Bobo is scared, she doesn't know her way home, she doesn't know if her mum's going to come back. It's a dangerous place to be. She can hear all the wild animals of the forest encroaching on her, and so it's a song we wrote for that moment, called Bobo and the Cattle. Don't let's go to the dogs tonight, though the chances are high and there's signs that we might. Don't let's go to the dogs tonight, there's work to be done and two makes it light. We take the horses and ride on the sand, the cattle are lost and they must be found. They'll keep a herd, but they've had years to roam, you know the dogs are thirsty and we should go home. We didn't plan to drink today, but the path narrows out and I'm starting to sway. I said I'll wait here for you, but now I'm alone. The sun is going and our dogs have gone. Don't let's go to the dogs tonight, though I can hear them howling and I think that I might. Don't let's go to the dogs tonight, though I can hear them howling and I think that I might. whiskey here in the starlight. Don't let's go to the dogs tonight. We got whiskey here in the starlight. We got whiskey here in the starlight. We got whiskey here in the starlight.
Oh, it's nice to see a few people out there listening. Thank you for coming along.
Oh yeah. Should we bring in our guests for today?
Yes, let's bring them in.
Let's bring them in. So we are in notably a book lovers emporium in British Columbia, and the lovely owner of that bookshop is Samara Nicol. So I'll bring you on right here. There we go.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us. And we've also got a very special author guest. Beth, if you'd like to.
Oh, I'd love to introduce our next guest, who is a great friend, collaborator, award-winning songwriter and writer and all sorts of things, who's coming to chat to us this evening. This is Karine Polward. Hi, Karine.
Hi, thank you for joining us. So we thought we would play a song inspired by a Canadian author to kind of ease ourselves into.
So we got quite excited that it was we were going to be in Canada, because we're like, yes, we've got a couple of Canadian songs, we could do this. So we last year associated with another Canadian bookshop in on Prince Edward Island and in Halifax, Bookmark. I don't know if you know that one, but
Nice.
They commissioned us to write a song for their event that they had with Margaret Atwood when she brought out the Testament. So she was there, and we were kind of recorded this song, and they were playing the video of the song with her there. We weren't there in person, but it was lovely to be a part of that event, and also really interesting to read the Testaments after all this time as well. I read The Handmaid's Tale when I was at school, and I reread parts of it when a few years ago we were at the Albuquerque, the American Booksellers Association conference in Albuquerque, and we had to open up for Margaret Atwood at about 7 o'clock in the morning, which is one of those slightly surreal, terrifying moments in our lives. We took Molly along in her pajamas, and we had to play maybe 3 songs, and then we were trying to think if we could. Well, I think we ran out of time really, but to write a song at that time. So I reread parts of The Handmaid's Tale and a few other pieces of literature, and kind of, I suppose, was getting back into that world. And so then to read the Testaments was, it was all, I think, especially after having a child, I found it quite traumatic, to be honest, and really different to reading it at school. And but I did feel like there was some kind of, it felt like some kind of closure on it for me, which was interesting. But I think we'll play the song, and then we can maybe have a chat post-song. So the song we wrote is called Eve in Your Garden. I'll take these off too. So you'd understand the rise and fall, the action plan, the fight inside, surrender out, the stifled cries, the need to shout. The smuggled out, the smuggled in, a mayday loss, a mayday win. Trust in no one, trust in me, I could save humanity. Like Eve in your garden, holding the silence, moving in the shadows, storing the arrows, rotting from the top right down, weakened by the secrets found. Flesh lies rotting on the ground, the flesh I once silence, moving in the shadows, storing the arrows. Wired in and wired out, drinking from a poison cup. Worship God and shed the blood. Women have their sisterhood. Like Eve in your garden, holding the silence, moving in the shadows, storing the arrows. Eve in your garden, holding the silence, moving in the shadows, storing the arrows.
Thank you. Thank you
That was
very much.
lovely. I just enjoyed Karine and I just swaying.
Slightly out of time with each other on account of the
Yeah.
time lag.
Yeah.
That's great. But Ben and I was way out of time with each other in the same room. So.
You're allowed a couple of thousand miles of rhythm and consistency. I think
Fair.
that's fine.
Oh, so Samara, can you've only been open for a few days, a few months, really, haven't you? It's quite a new shop.
just over 3 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a time! What a time to open a book. What is this something you've always wanted to do, or was it something that grew quite recently?
No, I have wanted to own my own bookstore, I think, since I was like 17. And I just knew that was where I wanted to be. And I actually worked at a bookstore at Otter Books, the other bookstore in Nelson, for many, many years. And it just felt like the time was right, despite it being a global pandemic and things like that. It just felt like the time was right in my life and in our town to take that leap and open my own bookstore. And so far, so good.
Yeah, and it seems like from the people we've spoken to, certainly over the last few days, but I think generally it feels like bookshops, people have realised how important books are to them and how important bookshops are to them, having not had them for, several months last year, and that actually people are appreciating them and using them a lot
Exactly.
more. Do you think that too?
100%. Yeah. Even when I was still at Otters, we had one of our busiest summers ever during, last year. And that people were really realizing, how important bookstores are, but also supporting your local bookstores, because it's not just a retail business. It's a place that builds community and where there's connections of all kinds. And you get that kind of personal recommendation of books and stuff that you don't get online and you don't get in those big, commercial stores as well. So it's been really nice to get to create my own sort of, stamp of a bookstore and specialize in certain things. And it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun.
I was going to ask, what is your stamp on your bookshop? What is your creation? What things did you have to have in your bookshop?
Yeah, so because my space is quite small, it's only 500 square feet up in the main floor. I knew that I was going to have to really specialize in the genres and just how many books. So I decided to just do teen to adult. So I don't have any kids books. So it's sort of 13 plus and mostly fiction. With some great graphic novel selection and creative nonfiction like poetry and essays and memoirs and beautiful editions of classic books. And then all of the beautiful, fun, bookish gift things and fountain pens and writing paper and book themed candles and those kind of things that so like any book lover just comes in. It's like
bands.
Yes, exactly. You fit right in. Yeah, anything a book lover would come in and feel like it's a candy shop for book lovers. Yeah.
Oh,
and
that is quite a good strapline, actually.
Yes. Yeah. You know what? It wasn't me that said it. Some customer said it, and I was like, I'm going to take it, and I'm running with it.
Yeah.
And in terms of the books, Karine, sorry.
No. I was just really curious because I've got no idea what Nelson is like. To picture what your town is like and what the community around about it, what community you're serving as a store.
Yeah, so we're a city of about 12,000, and we're similar to Wigtown in that we're a small rural community that is also quite literary. So we have a little literary festival that happens in the summer. We have a lot of writers that live here and artists. We're quite an artsy community. So and it's quite a destination. We're in a very beautiful mountain setting on a lake, and we're just hard enough to get to that you can't just we don't get droves of people, but we do get a lot of tourists. So it's it's a beautiful town, and we have a big literary scene. So it felt like there was enough space for me to kind of like find that little nook and offer things that the other stores weren't, but also just to create even more of that community that draws people. Because a book lover will go to every single bookstore in a town, not just one.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we find here in Wigtown as well, is that, just if you open another bookstore, you're not in competition with the other bookshops. You're kind of adding to the reason to come to the town and to explore bookshops. And you're right, people will go to, if they love bookshops, they'll go to all the bookshops and explore them. That's why they come. So yeah.
So that's happy to be.
If Wigtown has got 1,000 people and 15 bookshops, I think you guys have got it a bit better with 12,000 people at least.
We're doing all right.
I was just gonna say, if anyone's got any questions for Samara or Karine, do put them on either our YouTube or Facebook page links, and we'll do our best to spot any and maybe feed them back to you guys as we go. And I need my glasses, that's why I'm looking around. Maybe they're on my head. They're on my head.
Do it all the time.
Yeah, great. There's lots of familiar faces joining us as well, which is really nice. Vic Bennett, Cassetta Fotti in Italy.
It's Vic's birthday. He's just going to shout out it's Vic's 50th birthday today. And she dropped in to see us yesterday from Cumbria, which was really lovely. So happy birthday, Vic. I hope you're having a lovely day. And the sun came out, right?
Yeah.
It didn't rain all day, so it was good.
I mean, it did rain at some point.
Yeah, it didn't rain all day. It rained some of the day.
That makes sense.
Not all day. Yeah.
Well, should we play another Canadian?
Yeah, let's do. I didn't know whether maybe Karine I kind of bypassed it a little bit, but we were talking about Margaret Atwood, and Karine's actually brought out an album in collaboration with
a neighbour of mine. So my village isn't known for bookshops; it's known for musicians. It's also 1,000 people in my village, and there's a kind of hub of folk and jazz and electronic musicians that live in my village, which is called Pathhead. It's quite close to Edinburgh. But I've just made an album with a neighbour of mine who's a fantastic jazz folk pianist. And there's a little Margaret Atwood connection. I couldn't resist the fact that you played a song based on Margaret Atwood's work. Towards the end of last year, I was asked by the BBC to record a version of a song for in the morning news programme for the Radio 4 is called the Today programme. And between Christmas and New Year, they have different people curate every morning. And one of the mornings was curated by Margaret Atwood. And she asked for a version of an Irish song called The Parting Glass. And the BBC got in touch to ask if I would be willing to record a version here in my spare room in my house for this Margaret Atwood programme. And I said, that sounds like a really dreadful idea, because it's not going to be good enough for Margaret Atwood, to be honest with you. And maybe she deserved a little bit better than that. And so I managed to talk the BBC into getting my pianist friend Dave Milligan involved in recording a version of The Parting Glass. And the story behind it was that her husband died quite recently, and it was his favourite song, and I think it was played at his wake, at his funeral. So my album has come about actually because of the request from Margaret Atwood for a version of The Parting Glass, because that's what brought us together to record something together, and the album was kind of born from that. I wish I had a grand piano to share it with you, but
I could see a keyboard in your background there.
Yeah, it's not quite the same.
But what a wonderful thing to come out of lockdown, and I guess because I guess you weren't travelling that far at the time, so having
not at all. No, and it was the
neighbour.
Yeah, it was great, and it was that feeling of making music with someone in real space again. I know, Samara, you said that you've just opened up recently, and there's been all kinds of restrictions about being able to see people in real space. It was just delightful to be able to make music with a real person. Yeah, so that's I guess so you guys wonderful. Get to do that. You get to do that in your house most weeks. Quite jealous of you.
Yeah, I mean,
There's ups and downs,
it's all right. Yeah. I do feel really lucky that we've been able to do this, over lockdown and play, because I probably wouldn't have done it by myself, to be honest. I would have been too afraid. So I think doing it together has been actually really good. And I was just thinking, we had a guest a couple of nights ago called Amy Jeffs, who's a wonderful person and songwriter and author, and she lives in Frome, and she had a similar story that she wanted to record some songs that had come out of her book, really, that were songs that kind of, she was writing her book, and then she wanted to write some kind of words and songs that came up to kind of accompany it in a way. But she did the same thing. She recorded it with a neighbour, and that was what sparked it, really, wasn't it? That she was able to do that in such close, And you might not just discover those people. I mean, it's such a lovely thing, isn't it?
Or you take them for granted because they're right value. So there's something about that just valuing what is on your doorstep.
Yeah, because it's probably world class or wonderful. Yeah. I was just thinking The Parting Glass is probably what I'd have sung at my funeral as well. It's such a song, and we used to sing someone. What was the version we used to sing with John and Serial? Yeah,
I don't know what the version was, but we did do a version, and then it was kind of a bit of a Molly lullaby at times as well. So, anyway, just sing anything to
exactly.
to get to sleep. Yeah, so. But and then it's also really, then you also really appreciate when you get to come out of your zone, your town as well. And Karine and I were lucky enough to go and record some music together in the spring, write some music together with a bigger group of people. This spell songs from the Lost Words book by Robert Macfarlane and Jackie Morris, and we were creating a second album, which was just it's great.
Yeah, it was a joy. Yeah,
that's exciting.
Yeah. Well, I think it was the first time that we got to be in a room, in a house really, as a bubble, and it felt like a lot of people. I mean, there was 7 of us in the band, but it really felt like, really, really special and magical to be, and so much energy, kind of magical energies between people.
Yeah, a year's worth of pent up creative energy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we can chat more about things like that later, and but you was thinking we should play another song.
Should we play one more song?
Yeah. Well, so we'll do another song inspired by a Canadian author. So another friend of ours. We're lucky to have these friends called Emma Hooper, who I play in a string quartet with back home, and we've played together for years, and then suddenly it turns out she's a great writer as well, and she brought out a book called Etta and Otto and Russell and James, which is about a woman who's in her 80s who decides that she wants to go and see the sea, and she's never visited the sea before, and she's just starting to forget things, so she leaves a note for her husband Otto and sets off on foot to see if she can find the sea. And she lives in a landlocked part of Canada, so she's got a long walk ahead of her. But the story goes back to when her and Otto were younger, and it was just before the Second World War. And Otto goes off to fight in the war and Etta stays at home and she ends up teaching in the school. But they start writing these letters between them, and Otto writes home about what his role is in the war, and he writes quite a lot about the sea and what his role is. And then she writes back and corrects him on his grammar, and they have this interaction that builds into a relationship. And then when Emma was writing this book, I knew that she'd come across a book that I knew about as well, called The Edges of Everywhere. And it's a poetry book put together by a creative writer who went into an Alzheimer's Day Centre called the Peggy Dodd Centre in Bath and got the patients there, all-day patients, to talk about their memories and to kind of create poems and stories. And some of the carers would do the same, and then it created this lovely book of memories and slightly disjointed stories, but all really beautiful. So the song that we're going to play is inspired a bit by both of those. It's called Edge of the World. Sorry, it's not quite right, sorry. I think it might need new strings. That'll do. This lady, this crazy lady, she's alright. She's alright. This woman, she chose to make this journey to the light. To the light. The light, the deep, deep, deep light. The light, the glistening light. We get up and we do what we can. What we can. And if it's walking, I can walk, I can walk, I can walk. If that's the plan, I can walk to the edge of the world. I can walk in this world. And if you can't find your story, it's alright. It's alright. You'll find something. You'll find something or someone to hold on to. To hold on to. The water is pulling me through. The water I'm holding on to. And I've never been to the sea. The waves, they are waiting for me to come home. You get used used to leaving your mind, leaving your mind. You forget what you're leaving behind, leaving behind. Now I remember my life. Now and then I remember my life. The colors, they're fading away, fading away. My sisters, my brothers, they're with me today, with me today. And I fought for this land, and I taught in this land, and I walk in this land, and I've never been to the sea. The waves, they are waiting for me to come home.
Beautiful.
Thank
Lovely,
you
really
very
lovely.
much. Thank you. It's a beautiful book. Etta and Otto and Russell and James. And she's brought out another one a couple of years ago now called Our Homesick Songs. Which is also really very, very beautiful.
Oh, I'm glad you brought her up, because when I was ordering all of the books in to fill a bookstore with the books, and I was trying to, make sure that I brought in the new stuff, but also a good, backlist of books, of good books. I missed that one, and I really enjoyed her stuff, so I'm ordering that.
Yes.
Just message Gemma.
I'll just let her know. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Samara. Should we find out about Karine's?
Yeah. So, feel free to stay on, Samara, ask questions or whatever you would like to do as well. It's very, very informal, but so Karine's not only a musician, she is an author in her own right as well, and has been working with an illustrator to create children's books, essentially, and we'll have a new one out quite soon, I believe.
Yeah, that's right. The illustrator's called Kate Leaper. She's based up in Edinburgh, and I've got the book that we made previously is this book here. It's called A Wee Bird Was Watching, and it's kind of a folk tale. So it's a sort of folk tale come parable about how the robin gets its red breast, which is a story that's common, I think, to many parts of the world. The robin in Scotland is not the same robin as you get in the west coast of Canada, but they both have red breasts. They're different birds, but they have the same name. And I think the same stories, the same kind of sort of indigenous folk tales, because the birds are so similar in their appearance. I think that the stories that are from the west coast of Canada are actually quite similar to the stories from the west coast of Scotland and Ireland about how the robin gets its red breast. So it's a little story of kind of migration and sanctuary and magic. And Kate she's a fabulous illustrator. She works very much in the kind of mythic folklore realm. She's illustrated quite a few encyclopedias of folk tale and magical creatures that's her world. It's very lush illustration. And we have a book coming out called The Queen of the Birds, which is another folk tale. It's a retelling of a legend called The King of the Birds. We don't have a king in ours, it's a queen. Yeah, it was due out in a couple of weeks. I'm a little bit heartbroken about it because there's been a slight error in the production of the book, and it's going to be delayed in coming out. It was due to come out actually at the beginning of next week. But yeah, it's a tale, I guess, with a environmental kind of slant to it. The way that we've told the story, it's sort of a kind of post-environmental, some kind of environmental breakdown has happened. The kingdom of birds is in a terrible mess, basically, after a big storm, and all the birds are in a fankle, and their nests are blown over, and it's all about how they manage to kind of work together and sort things out. And the hero of it all is the smallest of all the birds, which is the wren in the Scottish telling of the tale, specifically Jenny Wren, which is how she's known in Scotland. So it's a tale of the Queen of the Birds. But I do feel I feel a little bit like I'm a fledgling writer, very confident as a musician, but the writing is a kind of a bit of a new adventure over the past 3 or 4 years.
And do you feel like there's a crossover? Do you feel like it's because of the songwriting that you feel you can venture into storytelling and writing? Yeah,
there's an element of that. I mean, I think the art of songwriting, because songs are so brief, it's like, you have to be ultimately succinct if you're going to write a song. You don't have much room, much space. And also, the words don't do the whole job in a song. The music does half the job. And in some respects, making a picture book is comparable because the words only do half the job. The visual realm does the other half of the work. So the words have to know their place, if you know what I mean. So the story has to be very, very lean. But also not say everything, because if it said everything, there would be no job in the song for the music to do and no job in a picture book for the visual realm to do. So I do feel like having made songs it's a useful training ground. They're not the same arts, but it certainly gave me a wee bit of a push towards the the starting line in terms of how to write a picture book. But quite a steep learning curve. I totally doff my cap to those who are consistently making children's picture books and stories of high quality, because it's very, very difficult to say very little. And children are the most merciless of critics as well. Like if there's too many words, like it's, as you'll know from Molly, it's just instantaneous boredom. It's just,
But I think also as a parent reading the book, and where there's too many words in there yourself, when you're reading it, and true. I think and if you're kind of tripping over the words a bit, or just that they don't flow, I think we notice the difference between the really good ones and, well, I hope we do, the really good ones and the ones that just don't quite hit the nail on the head with that kind of storytelling and the flow and the
definitely, and the rhythm and the cadence, and there's a musicality to really great picture books, isn't there? They have to have momentum, and they have to be so well structured as well. So I really I feel like I've learned an immense amount about now when I pick up. I mean, my kids are older now, so I'm not so much in the realm of picking up picture books, but my goodness, I get a real sense of the process of the making now when I pick up books of that kind. And it's a proper nimble and lean discipline, I think, to make them really catch.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can tell when some of the stories have come from a musical backing. So like Julia Donaldson's, for example, they just have a wonderful flow all the way through, and it was no surprise to learn that she'd written them as songs before, because it's like, of course, Sorry, Samara. I
was just curious if in the process of making the book, had you written the text before the illustrations, or was that something that happened concurrently, or how was that process for you?
Yeah, it was quite a process. I mean, the story, this book that's due out this autumn, called The Queen of the Birds, is a story that I've told in many guises for many years as an oral tale, because alongside being a songwriter and musician, I'm also an oral, old school storyteller, and that's part of my gig, is to tell stories like that. But I realised that I told them primarily for adult audiences, and actually that they weren't as good as they could have been. So I presented a version of that story to begin with, which I think was 1,200 words to begin with. And by the time it was whittled down, I think it was 476 words. So, it was three times too long. And then the whole process of having to kind of like structure it into spreads. So every turn of the page, something has to happen. So there's a logic to how things have to be. As it's almost like storyboarding a film. Every spread of page has to have its own integrity, and there has to be clearly a reason to turn the page, and things are moving on. So it was a very much a to and fro process to get the words right. And even with the artwork that Kate produced with the words, that also she sketched out the kind of shape of pages, and then it was quite a long process of honing things down. But ultimately, the text had to be narrowed down to the bones of what was required. Yeah.
It's suddenly the way you're describing it, how the two kind of, you didn't write it and then she just produced the illustrations. It was weaving, and that was very much our experience of writing music alongside film. It was everything was changing all the time, and that's not something I'd necessarily realised with something like that. But I guess it really is. These things develop together, and because they do that, like it has a certain magic, because it hasn't just been a straight response, and that construct, the way it's been put together is almost magical. It gives it a magical element about it.
Although it's not magical at all, it's actually deeply, behind scenes, it's actually deeply rigorous and structural and all the rest of it. But everything's got to have its, but it has to, in order to, like you say, in order to have that feeling of ease and things just being embedded, it can't be that one thing is superimposed on the other. They each have to have their own space, don't they?
It's both annoying that you have to go through that process, but it is part of that process to create something wonderful. But it's annoying you have to go through.
It's actually quite joyous, and I think from my point of view as a storyteller, the process of working with a visual artist, I think, has really honed my dramaturgical chops, in terms of just like what's necessary and what's not. And then when it comes to telling the story live, which I will be doing shortly when I go on tour, I'm going to tell this story as part of my live gig set. And I'll be aware that there may be places that I can embellish that story because there is no visual realm to refer to. But I'm much, much clearer now about where that's got purpose and where it helps to conjure images in someone's heads and where it's got no purpose at all. So I found it a fascinating process as a songwriter, musician, and as an oral storyteller. It's definitely, I think, it's been a really helpful process, I think.
That's amazing. And one thing I really love about Karine as well is that you do your research. You kind of delve into how to do things, or you want to find out everything about that particular thing, and perhaps that applies to that particular thing. But can you tell us a little bit about some of the other projects that you've either done in the past or got coming up, where you've been delving into something that you didn't know anything about, but you really wanted to know something about, and you've just I've got one. I mean, I am a geek. I love learning about things. It's the only reason I make anything is to learn about things, and that applies to songs, stories, anything that I'm making. I love research. So loads of my books on my shelves are reference books and non-fiction books, because I just love them. Like, I love them. And it's not that I don't love fiction, but I just love to learn about a very specific thing. So my most recent project has been working with the Royal Botanic Garden in Edinburgh, which is it's a 200-year-old garden, and with these beautiful Victorian glass houses in it that have been a space to keep tropical plants that would absolutely die a death instantaneously in the Scottish climate, but they've been kept under glass, some of them for 200 years. And just today, in fact, the longest lived plant in the Royal Botanic Garden collection was felled because it had reached the capacity of the glasshouse in which it was housed. The glasshouses are no longer safe or fit for purpose, and the tree was too old and too fragile to move. But it's pretty devastating. This is a tree in excess of 200 years old. It's a palm tree originally from Bermuda, and
Yeah, so my latest job has been about the ecology and ethnobotany of palm trees, and also about the experience of being a gardener or a horticulturalist who looks after plants. So last week with my friend and colleague Pippa Murphy, I curated a living wake for this elder palm tree to kind of honour its life and honour all the people that had looked after it. But it involved months and months of research and archive digging, and I mean, I'm never happier than kind of inhabiting that realm, and then to make something that's got emotional heart to it. So it's not just about, it's how to kind of combine all that factual learning and make something that actually has an emotional connection with the subject matter and with the people. So yeah, that's the latest thing, and that would be kind of typical of the things that bring me great joy. Not the felling of, I should add, not the felling of the tree, which hasn't brought me joy.
I can't believe that was today.
Yeah, it's today. So, and it's been a really big deal and quite a sorrowful thing. And I know on the west coast of Canada, that's a huge issue, isn't it? Around kind of elder redwood trees, and there's a lot of contention, isn't there, about
old growth forest and
I mean old growth forest. And we don't have anything anywhere approaching the age of the trees that you have in the Pacific coast there, but we have our own comparable environments here. Would be things like peat bog environments, which are equally ancient. But I mean, what's the state of play just now in British Columbia? Have you got an environmental bent to your shop? Is that a thing that people are interested in when in
the Kootenays? Yes, I don't specifically, mostly because I'm mostly fiction, but definitely a lot of environmentalists in this area, and we're having it. I don't know if you're familiar at all with the Fairy Creek blockade that's happening right now. Yeah. It's one of the last sort of big old growth forests on the west coast, and there's been a lot of turmoil trying to protect that piece, and it's been a bit heartbreaking to watch, but also hopeful to see all the people who are making a stand to try and hold on to that, because I think it's so easy to forget how important our relationship with our planet is, that that we are deeply connected to all of that. And so your stories about researching those bits and then finding the emotion is a beautiful thing.
And am I right in thinking that because I'm a bit obsessed with trees at the minute, but then Suzanne Simard, she's from BC, isn't she?
She actually has connections to the Kootenay area.
Amazing, okay.
Yeah, I think she lived here for a while, and she was supposed to come through here, but global pandemic.
But she's done such a lot to kind of like enhance our understanding of how trees kind of act as communities and communicate with one another. So so
for sure. Yeah, and Robin Kimmerer, the Braiding Sweetgrass, is another important piece of work that's been luckily best-selling, so people everywhere are picking it up and reading it, which is nice. Yeah. Oh, I was just going to say quickly that I when I was in the UK in 2019 and I got to go to the festival, and I volunteered there, and it was a life highlight. But I went to Edinburgh as well, and I went to the Royal Botanical Gardens, and I happened to have a glorious sunny day, and it was in October, and it was beautiful. And so as you were talking about it, I was having very vivid memories of being there.
Oh, it's a gorgeous place. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I should say as well, Samara and us were on the same quiz team at the Wigtown Book Festival. Did we win?
We won. We were on the team with Sean, and I think that was the person who won.
I didn't want to bring that up.
Clearly very proud about that.
Yeah. I'm sure that people will post that we didn't, and it's a figment of our imagination. But
no,
let it be known on official Wigtown broadcast that we won that year. I think it's because we had you, not Sean. He's useless.
I definitely don't think it was me.
No, it wasn't me. It was probably Sean. He's not useless.
It was the magic combination.
Yeah. And the beer.
Yeah.
I was just quickly going to say something about just when you were talking and thinking about environmentalism and kind of, and the hope, you were talking about hope and the, turning things around, and when you see people actively, like whether it's kids learning about the lost words or even adults learning about the lost words and things like that, and turning all these kind of dreadful stories into hope. And I guess maybe that's, our role as songwriters or writers or authors, that's where we can kind of do that in a way. And that's what's been so joyous about the Spell Songs project, is kind of, I suppose bringing the emotion in, but also there's a message there, it's bringing hope, it's something for the future, hopefully, and just spreading the word. But that book in particular has gone so many places.
I think as well, it's and hope, because hope is a massive part of it, but it's also that when people feel hopeless, then I think it's books and films and songs that can allow us just to feel absolutely devastated as well. And there's something about being in the company of other people, which I think is something that music can offer, maybe more than the solitary act of reading can, is that you can be in a room with people feeling devastated with other people. And weirdly, it's both more and less devastating at the same time, if you know what I mean. There's a kind of solace, maybe not hope, and just allowing yourself to feel that and not be alone with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, very much so. That thing of, again, just writing a song inspired by a book, and because it's our emotional response, I always find it amazing how someone can feel an emotional attachment to the book that they haven't read through a 3-minute song, but because they're listening to our emotional response, that's what they get in that 3 minutes or 7 minutes. And I'm always quite amazed by that kind of crossing the arts, crossing the taste and hearing and sensory boundaries between a subject are actually quite interesting points to bring those emotions up.
I'm just wondering if we had any, when you asked about questions, whether we had any come up.
Is this live? Yes, it is.
Can you tell? No edits.
Some great to hear Karine talking about the process behind this, and lots of positive, very lovely comments. Very good writing, Karine. Another comment. No questions as yet that I can see, but I may have missed one. I would eat book-shaped candy, says Ken.
All right.
We should play another quick song.
Let's do it. Yeah, maybe do another song, and then maybe can we do a quick? Because I know Karine's got some favourite books that she'd like to say. So maybe we could do another song, and then maybe nice. And Samara as well. It'd be really nice to hear your top picks.
That would be great. I think should we do Sanctuary instead, because that's got a bit of an environmental
okay.
bit to it. So this is a song that we haven't prepared, inspired by Philip Pullman's Room, The Book of Dust. But the thing my response to it anyway was, this world that they inhabit is a world where there's a very strict dogma about how the world works, and you're not allowed to challenge that and question that. And my background is a science background. I did science at university, and the whole premise of science for me is that you don't understand anything, and you go out and you try and learn about stuff. And so that kind of thing kind of resonated for me. So I tried to get some of that kind of response back into the song, mainly so that my science tutors at university would think that I'd use my degree for something at least. It has a bit about like this. I love this idea of a scientific revolution, where you have a crazy idea and everyone says it's completely bonkers, but then eventually someone's like, oh no, actually that's probably a much better explanation for everything after all. And it's sort of, the process of science is really not what you might expect. So anyway, the song is called Sanctuary.
Thank you very much.
You're like jukeboxes. So many songs. It's amazing.
I only write songs because I can't play anyone else's because just not good enough. So I couldn't play it. So I thought I'd just to write some songs.
Well, yeah, I wasn't quite prepared to play that one. I have to say. So should we do some? Would it be okay to do some top picks from both of you? Maybe should we go Karine first? Could you?
Yeah, sure. Okay. So I mentioned that I'm a lover of reference books and non-fiction. So if I could just flag my and I'll do a wee special punt for the Scottish writer since we've got a wee international thing going on here. My favourite writer from Scotland in the non-fiction and poetry department is Kathleen Jamie, who's now our national poet. Yay! She's our, we call it the national macker. She's got 3 amazing books of non-fiction essays called Finding, Sightlines and Surfacing. She's just extraordinary and has kind of turned a lot of what people consider kind of environmental or nature-based writing on its head. And my most proud moment as a writer was last year to be included in the first ever anthology of Scottish nature writing, which is called Antlers of Water, and I've got an essay in that. So my life goal would be to write something worthy of being on the shelf alongside Kathleen Jamie, even like in the Z list, Kathleen Jamie's A list. If I can pick two more.
Sure.
So my bedside reading, it's another wee Scottish punt for the fiction, Ali Smith.
Lovely.
Just amazing. And I feel super proud that Scotland as a wee country can produce even just two writers as brilliant as Ali Smith and Kathleen Jamie. And one more punt would be for, hang on, where is he? Oh, things. One more poet, also Scottish, Don Patterson, who's also a wonderful musician. He's an incredible jazz guitarist, and I once heard him on the radio asked if he ever wrote songs, and he said as a poet he was incapable of writing songs because he never left enough space for the music. So it's exactly what I was talking about earlier. But he writes the most exquisite poetry. So they would be three of my favourites.
Thank you, Karine.
Brilliant.
Good
Thank you
picks.
so much.
Yeah.
I loved Kathleen Jamie's surfacing. I really,
it's just mighty. Yeah.
I was going on to Ben about it. It was my bedside table story.
Yeah, you were on and
for a
on.
bit.
Nice.
And Samara, what would be your top three picks in your bookshop if we came in and you were like, "You've got to read these three"?
Oh, well, I probably would have more than three because I got to stock with all of my favorite things. But I thought I had three, but we were sold out of one. So I'll just mention it. But it's an older book called Fauna by Alyssa York. She's a Canadian author, and it's a really cool story set in Toronto. And it's about the intersection of urban and wilderness and the creatures and the humans that live at that intersection. So the people who live on the street, the squirrels and the raccoons, and it's a beautiful love story at the same time. And it was just a really neat sort of exploration of that space in between. Then this one that just came out last week, Richard Powers, Bewilderment. And it's so good.
He wrote because he's the overstory guy. Yeah. Oh my goodness, that's probably my favorite book of the last 2 years.
And this is much shorter, 300 pages. I listened to the audio and it will break your heart, but it is so gorgeous. And I thought it was appropriate for what we were talking about just before your song, about sort of the relationship between our inner worlds and our inner mind, and then the outer world. And so the main character is an astrobiologist looking for the possibility of life on other planets. But his 9-year-old son, has behavioral challenges and an inner landscape that is a little bit more maybe convoluted than the average person. So it's a looking into that and connection, and then looking out and connection. And it was just, it was beautifully told. It was really good. And then the last one, I went local, and I thought it was also on theme. So Sarah Butler put out The Wild Heavens 2019, I think. And she's a beautiful writer, and it's set in sort of our neck of the woods, my neighborhood. And it's about a woman who is following a set of tracks in the snow, and those tracks are maybe undetermined. And then it follows through sort of like her childhood, growing up, falling in love, and to the present day. And it's questions of faith and the unexplainable and relationships with our natural world. The way she writes about the animals in her backyard are just beautiful. So it was another very lyrical, compelling read. And they would actually pair quite nice together, the guys next to each other. Wow. So those would be my picks.
Wonderful. Well, we'll try and put those in the comments afterwards, or maybe if you guys can remind us just afterwards, and we'll make sure in case anyone goes, I can't remember what they said.
That's great. We should get the other bookshops and guests to do that. That's a very good idea.
It's a really nice thing to do. And I'm just, I guess maybe just a couple, because Karine hasn't played any music, but she's got so many albums out there. So please check out Karine's albums, and also the Spell Songs albums. There's already one out there. We've got another one coming out in December. So exciting. It's really exciting. So please do check out the music. Check out Samara's Bookshop, and please comment, say hi, and And just thank you so much, you two, for being our guests today. It's been such a lovely interaction talking to you both, and lovely that you found some connections between people as well.
Thanks for
having
coming
us.
into my little bookshop far away and so near.
Thank you so much. We're just going to do a little
Lovely
shout out
being
again to all the bookshops who have been tweeting this. Well, it's been going out on lots of different pages around the world. So it's Portkey, Tidal Wave in Albuquerque, Fuller Books, Hearthfire, Alcott's Attic, Books on the Hill, Old Bank, Book Nook, Collected Works, Bath Old Books, Rossiter Books, Wigtown Book Festival, The Bookshop, The Open Book,
Clunes Booktown, Henry Sutherland's, Blue House, Corsham, Bookwork. Oh, we said that. Just down twice. Atkinson Price in Bigger, so somewhere between us and Karine.
yeah,
Word, Main Street, Bridge Books, Bookworks again. I said that
just
3
do
times
that to
now.
make it look like
Okay,
there's a longer
Jackie
list.
Morris and Second Star to the right.
Yeah. So thank you everybody who's been broadcasting, and we will be back on our virtual world tour. I think we're off to Sweden in a couple of days' time.
Exciting.
Yeah, got the visa. And so we will. That's what day are we today? It's
That'll be
Tuesday.
Thursday.
So Thursday at 9 o'clock UK time, we'll come back, and we'll have 2 more lovely guests joining us then. But thank you so much, Samara. Thank you so much, Karine. It's been lovely to almost have you in our room, and to be in your bookshop, Samara. Thank you for having us.
Pleasure.
Take care.
Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.